things are getting really intense out on the high seas. I mean, it feels like a shadow conflict between some of the world's biggest powers is suddenly breaking out into the open. And in just the last couple of days, we've seen this incredible series of escalations that, frankly, look a lot less like diplomacy and more like the first moves in a war.
So let's just dive right into it. The question is, what is going on? Why is this happening? We're going to unpack a source that details this incredibly fast escalation in maritime tensions. We'll look at who is doing what, to whom, and maybe most importantly, try to figure out the high-stakes strategy that could be driving all of this chaos.
All right, first up, let's just get a grip on the events themselves. The source material we're looking at paints this picture of an absolutely frantic 48 hours. We're talking tit-for-tat seizures happening across the world's most critical shipping lanes.
I mean, just look at how quickly this all went down. First, Iran grabs 2 tankers with ties to the US. Then, almost immediately, in what really looks like a direct response, India goes and intercepts 3 of Iran's tankers. And then, this is the one that really makes you go, wow. US commandos actually board and seize a Russian tanker after a 10,000 nautical mile chase across the ocean. This is not just posturing. This is direct military action.
So what you're seeing here is a map of that chain reaction. Iran hits US interests. Then India, which seems to be acting on behalf of the US, hits back at Iran. And then the US goes and hits Russia directly. It's this tangled web, right? Where every single move seems to be triggering an even bigger one.
And that brings us to this conclusion from the analysis we're exploring. It says we've moved way beyond just sanctions and strongly worded letters. The specific term it uses is an undeclared war. A conflict where, commandos are boarding ships and countries are seizing each other's assets right out on the open ocean.
Okay, so why now? Why is all this blowing up right at this moment? Well, these actions are definitely not random. The source we're looking at points to one central reason for this whole explosion of hostility.
And there it is. The thinking in this analysis is that the US isn't just going after Iran. It's actually sending a very loud, very clear message to Iran's most powerful ally, Russia. That seizure of the Russian tanker, it's being presented as a direct response to Russia's support for Iran. It basically widens the conflict to say, hey, if you stand with them, you're in this too.
But this whole fight isn't just about who can grab the most tankers. The source claims that Iran is now threatening a completely different kind of conflict, and honestly, one that might be far, far more dangerous.
Just listen to this direct quote, which the source attributes to Iran. They're talking about a surprise weapon, something so devastating that no eye has ever seen them before. This isn't talk about the missiles or drones we already know about. This is a threat of something totally new, totally unseen.
So what could that weapon actually do? Well, this gives you an idea of the speculation. The source suggests it's a form of electronic warfare. I mean, look at this. Widespread blackouts, shutting down a city, satellites just going dark, financial markets completely frozen, military command centers thrown into chaos. It's the idea of a knockout blow, delivered without ever firing a single bullet.
Yeah, this kind of attack is often what people call an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse. It's basically a massive burst of energy that can just fry electronics over a huge area. The source suggests this is exactly the type of asymmetric weapon Iran might be hinting at. And what that means is it's a weapon that could let a less powerful country completely level the playing field by crippling a super advanced adversary like the United States.
Now, as all these tensions are cranking up, there's another major player in the region watching all of this with, well, a whole set of its own anxieties. The source goes into detail about Israel's deep-seated fear over how the U.S. might decide to handle this crisis. And this right here is what the source describes as Israel's absolute nightmare. They're worried the U.S. might launch some kind of limited, symbolic strike. Just enough to look tough and then declare mission accomplished and walk away. But the problem is, that would leave Iran's core capabilities, its nuclear program, totally intact. The result? You'd have a wounded, furious, and even more dangerous Iran, now dead set on getting revenge against both Israel and the U.S. For them, an incomplete victory is actually the most dangerous outcome possible.
And all of this leads us to the final, and maybe the most chilling piece of this whole puzzle. The source puts forward this grand strategic theory that this entire escalating crisis, it might just be a carefully laid trap set by another superpower.
So the big question is, what's stopping the U.S. from just launching a full-scale attack? Well, this analysis argues it has nothing to do with sympathy for Iran. It's the fear of walking straight into a massive strategic trap that's been set by Russia.
And the source draws a really powerful historical parallel to make this point.
Think back to the Soviet Union and Afghanistan in the 80s. It was a decade-long war that just completely drained its economy, its military, and its political will. Many say it helped lead to its eventual collapse. Well, the theory here is that Russia wants to engineer the exact same thing for the United States, using a war with Iran as the bait.
And this chart really breaks down what the alleged goals of that trap would be. You can see the biggest piece of the pie is just depleting the U.S. military in some long, unwinnable war. But look at the other parts. It's also about triggering an economic recession back home, shattering America's prestige around the world, and, at the end of the day, making the Russia-China alliance even stronger. It's a whole plan designed to weaken a global rival on multiple fronts.
Which really just leaves us with this one final, pretty unsettling question. When you have commandos seizing tankers and threats of infrastructure-crippling superweapons and these grand strategies to trap superpowers in endless wars, have we already passed the point of no return? The source we've looked at today certainly suggests the first shots may have already been fired.